KwaZulu-Natal. Thank you, Reva. Over to you.
Oh, thank you, Marion, so much. Well, tonight, this Kabbalat Shabbat, our parasha is Achrei Mot, and it actually means after death. Now, before we discuss a little bit about that tonight and in much more detail tomorrow morning, Passover may have just ended, but it's not too early, is it, to talk about Yom Kippur, which is part of this parasha. In fact, it's two major themes. One, very sadly, is the death of the sons of Aaron, who died young men mysteriously. It was their first day in the priesthood, and they brought what we call a strange fire, and it consumed them, and they died. But we're going to be discussing more of that tomorrow. I thought I'd share with you more about the thoughts of the actual title After Death. And this time I've been influenced by reading two of our own great rabbis, Baruch Hashem, very much alive and very inspirational. And the one is Rabbi Rick Jacobs, and he brought up some very interesting thoughts about the death of these young men and what is a strange fire. And no rabbis have really agreed on why they died. What did they do to cause it? But more of that tomorrow. Another very interesting aspect of Achrei Mot, after death, is brought up by one of our own rabbis and cantors, Jill Abramson. When I first read that Achrei, after death, we've already discussed this when we were discussing the parasha Shemini. We already went into detail about why these two young men died. But perhaps after death has another meaning. I always saw it as referring to the horrible thought, in a way, the frightening thought of one's own death, but actually the meaning is not that at all. It seems to be that the meaning is, how do we behave after the death of a loved one? How do we handle that tragedy of losing a loved one? We all know that Moses insisted and Aaron agreed that he would not show his emotions straight away. He wasn't allowed to rent his clothes and cry, but because he was a great leader, and you have to always put the people first. However, if you remember, he did refuse to eat anything. And when Moses reprimanded him, because that is part of the ritual in those days, he said, what would Hashem have thought of me, or the people, when I've just lost my sons? And Moses agreed. He actually apologized. He was big enough. So how do we handle the death of loved ones? Normally, death is more associated before this horrific plague we've been through, and before this tragedy in Ukraine. It's more associated, by and large, with people who've reached an older age, or tragically also people who die of illness. But all around us, you and I, through the last 2 years, have seen deaths that have nothing to do with age or even a predetermined illness, but just people dying from COVID-19. Yes, they say those with comorbidities, and how we've weathered these 2 years together, especially surrounded in so many ways by this tragic, horrific loss of loved ones, of friends, and even people we don't know. So this Rabbi Cantor Jill Abramson she brings up a new term because people are trying to realign their thinking. We are living in an era that in 2 years, the entire world we knew before has changed. It'll never be the same again. And that is when you go through a great disaster or a great revolution, like the French Revolution, with war and pestilence and hunger and famine. You look for the good. Human beings are hardwired by Hashem to survive. The same as a tiny little seed falling into the smallest crack with a drop of water will push up between those stones. That is actually the human race. And Hashem has built in us that desire to survive. Yes, we know in COVID-19, people have died, innocent, wonderful people, as in this war with Ukraine, as in all conflicts, and in the Shoah. It's horrific what they call collateral damage. But how do you and I handle that, the ones who, Baruch Hashem, at this point, have been left behind? So researchers have also said what makes a person more resistant to living to death, to living longer, let's say. Yes, we know all about exercise, we know all about eating well, we know all about doing whatever we can, taking vitamins, etc., to stay healthy, to fight off any disease we may get, be it COVID-19 or something else. And yet they have found that many people throughout the ages, why do some live to 120, urine, Baruch Hashem, and why do others not? When I was still working in the UK in the 80s, they did a study there, and it's come back today, to say that, you know, the insurance companies were quite wrong to allocate people to certain age groups and certain risks, because people had found even then that when you put one person, let's say of 70, who was alive, bright, full of vigor, and you made them do all the physical tests, they might have a real age of about, I don't know, 40. Whereas you might take a young person of 30 who had led a very bad life, who overate, who wasn't active, and most of all, who wasn't mentally active. And their profile would be a man of 70 or 80. And so the scientists already for years have known there is a huge difference between a biological age and your real age. However, now they are looking at something else. And they've brought up the most funny term, and this is what I found in this drosha by this lady Cantor. It's called gerotranscendence. I don't like that, but it says overcoming older age. I don't even like that, but it's very interesting that this has come up now in this era. The core of this theory suggests that normal human aging includes a range of vital and overlooked components. And that is how the person thinks, how they feel, the goals they've got in their life, and the passion for those goals. You know, it's not true that hard work will kill you. That and I'm pleased that these scientists are saying it now. You can work 18 hours a day, and provided you love what you do, you're passionate about it, you might get exhausted, but you won't die from it. But you work in a 9-to-5 job or a 9-to-7 job that you hate, that you resent going to work every morning, that you're doing it just for the money. And those are the people they found who die younger. So I just want to share some of the things that this fascinating parasha, Achrei Mot, how do you and I react after we've lost someone? Well, we know that the Jewish way means that we have to look at the living, that we've got to mourn. Yes, for a month or more we mourn. But then, like Aaron, we have to look at those we've lost and in their memory and in their name and in their image, make the world better for people around us who are also suffering a loss. But that's really more idealistic. What they also say is that as you grow older in years with more and more experiences behind you, it actually gives you a chance to appreciate life more. It actually gives you a chance to say, you know what I did, my God, why did I do that 20 years ago? Now I see why I did it. So it gives us a chance to really realign our thoughts and changing our priorities. And it's incredible that there are many projects today, and particularly in this era as well, looking at longevity. And I just want to quote here that researchers Howard Friedman and Leslie Martin thought that the characteristics correlated with those who lived the longest were very unusual. People, okay, I've said this already, do not die from working long hours at a channeling job. In fact, the people who work the hardest and feel they're being of service, either as an entrepreneur to the company they work for or for themselves like me, that they get a kick out of helping the company and the employees and people do well, they live the longest. How amazing. But another thing they found, which was quite amazing, and I'll conclude on this, Friedman and Martin reported one thing that marks a health and a long life. And guess what? It's participation in a congregation like ours. Now, before you say anything, they found that it was not necessarily pointing that a church or a synagogue or a mosque and all our magnificent words did anything. No. And they said even less than sitting in a garden and meditating. No, what they discovered in deep research was that being part of a congregation or community, and this is important, and finding people with whom you can share the difficult times in your life. And this is where the Jewish religion is extraordinary in our rituals that handle us from that horrific moment of losing someone we love to getting over it and never forgetting that person, never really getting over it, but in their memory carrying on. It also says that the people who live the longest, when they can find a community that gives them a reason to perhaps be more than we all are, that together we can be more than we are, that they can participate and help others, as so many of you are doing in this congregation. So it is quite amazing. The 71st Psalm tells us of an aching plea. Al tashlicheni leyat zikna. And it says, translated loosely into English, do not cast me off as I grow. It says old. I'm crossing that out and making it older. But as we age, as we have more and more experience, we are each given a gift. The gift of utilizing that experience to live a better life, to find more meaning, and in a way, I think, to even get younger and more passionate, because we forgive ourselves our mistakes of the past. We are nicer to other people when they hurt us or make mistakes. We try to understand and put ourselves in their shoes. That doesn't come easily. That comes with experience and, of course, with hearing the beautiful words of Torah every week. So let us say that no matter what age you or I or anyone is, no one we know lives forever, but Achrei Mot, afterlife, reminds us that how we live each day is what counts. None of us knows when that day will come where we are no longer physically here. I do believe in a higher energy that we join, but it's not the point. Jews are not interested in an afterlife at all. We're interested only in how we act here. In fact, I was trained by a wonderful man in the States, and he was connected to UCLA University, William Penpatrick. We only spent 2 weeks. And he had a beautiful saying. He said, I don't even want to know about an afterlife, because all I know is that if I do everything I can now while I'm alive, correcting my mistakes as I have more experience, reaching out to others and growing and achieving my goals, but at the same time, those goals must benefit my employees or my students or other people or my nation or my country. And that reminded me perhaps exactly now what it means an older person. As you grow older, you actually get younger, more passionate, exciting. If you really understand that you have to have a cause, and all of us have a cause, and that cause has been deepened by the plague we've been through, by the loss of loved ones, and that's human and animal, and also by the horrific loss that we're seeing in Ukraine. We've been deepened as human beings to search for a meaning, to make each day more meaningful than before. And just as that great Zionist leader, Theodore Herzl, said, he wrote a book, and it was called Alter Neuland, Old New Land, because out of the new ultimately comes the old, and out of the older ultimately comes the new again, with new ideas, new thoughts, and new love for the next generation. Shabbat Shalom. Back